Hey, today I'm getting together with my friend Mark Helfman. We're going to talk about things that interest both of us, and particularly with regard to this current coronavirus situation that's sort of derailed all of our lives. Hi, Mark.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, and how are you today?
Doing all right. Thanks so much for having me on. This is really, really exciting.
Yeah,
I
so
can't
you're
wait. Yeah,
home,
I'm
right?
home. I got the kids in the house. Hopefully they don't barge in and working. You know, both my wife and I are working, and we got the kids, and they're doing remote school. So we got a lot of stuff going on.
So that's all new for you. You and your wife both used to, in a normal day, go out to work.
Yes.
Kids went to school.
Yep. Well, the normal day, my wife's a teacher. I work for, my day job is I work for National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, which is the government agency. It's Dr. Fauci's agency. It's the government agency that researches all infectious disease, including coronavirus. And then the kids go off to school. Some days they have an after-school program or some sort of activity or whatever, and we all get together for dinner. By the time the kids go to sleep and the housework is done, I work on my blog, on my newsletter, and other things that I'm publishing related to cryptocurrency.
And that's how we met each other
Yeah.
at some blockchain event somewhere along the way, and we've bumped into each other on many of them. Mark has written a book called Consensus Land, one of the very first fictional books about blockchain, and I was pretty excited because he autographed my copy of it. But he's also written another one now called Bitcoin or Bust, and that's about crypto or Bitcoin in general in Wall Street. Tell us a
Well,
little bit about your new book.
it's about the entry of Wall Street into cryptocurrency. One of the things that we've seen during this, what people call the Great Bear Market, is Wall Street has started to edge into cryptocurrency, either using subsidiaries or partnerships to create opportunities to custody to custody cryptocurrency, to hold it basically on behalf of large institutions. They've gotten into the exchange game. They're offering derivative products, futures, options, things like that, and finding other ways to make money off of cryptocurrency and interest in cryptocurrency. And one of the things that occurred to me, so I when I was younger, I worked on Capitol Hill. And so I had a chance to see how the system works and how you gain influence politically. And it just occurred to me that once Wall Street starts making money off of cryptocurrency, they're going to have an interest in making sure that the federal government, that the US government, and probably all world governments are going to write rules that are favorable to Wall Street continuing to make money off of cryptocurrency. So my wheels started turning, and I wrote a series of articles that I then packaged up into a book, explaining a little bit of my sense of of the new dynamics that this is going to introduce in the cryptocurrency market. Really delve into some of the potential ramifications and consequences. And I thought that was a really important book to write, because what I saw a lot of the mainstream coverage was, the legit mainstream coverage, like the information that goes out to the masses, didn't talk about it at all. But in terms of like the way the cryptocurrency media was covering it, it was all about, oh my God, institutional investors are going to come and send Bitcoin's price to the moon. All this money is going to rush in and we're all going to be rich, which is debatable. I suspect over time that will happen, but with what consequences? Because Wall Street is not doing this to make you rich. They're doing it to make themselves rich. And then once they once they figure out how to make money off of this stuff, they're going to make sure they continue to lobby in the public interest a way that Wall Street continues to make money off this stuff.
We could have a whole new conversation just about that, because think about all those libertarian mindsets, all of those independent and a new way of doing money, having to collaborate or get along with or find a way to coexist with Wall Street. Oh my.
Especially when you consider that the technology itself would render Wall Street obsolete. So there are all these dynamics that I thought were really interesting. Nobody was talking about them. So if you read the book, you get to see my take on all that.
I have not read number 2, the new book yet, but I will. And
All right.
I can't wait to do that. So your first book, Consensus Land, the fictional account, that might be a good entry point for a lot of people who wonder, what is this blockchain business? Was that your intention when you wrote it?
Yeah. I actually came in late to the game. By the time I really caught up to what was going on, it was basically the peak of the Bitcoin mania, which was the end of 2017. Mm-hmm. And once the dust settled and the smoke cleared, and probably around March, I guess it was around March of 2018, and all the attention faded, I just kind of took stock of what was going on, how nobody was interested in it anymore. And I reflected a little bit on how the mainstream media was covering it and the impressions people got from that. And I just felt like they were really underserved as far as understanding the potential of the technology. Because all the coverage was, Bitcoin's amazing, you're going to get rich, this is the money of the future, or Bitcoin is rat poison, it's all going to die, it's a massive bubble, go away. And I really felt that did a disservice.
People are going to shy away from those get rich quick things, and they're going to shy away from the things that seem a little bit gray.
Yeah. But how do you make real to people, right? That time, it was even more experimental than it is now, where you didn't have nearly as much infrastructure built out as we do now that allowed people to use it, access it, and put it to use for something other than speculation. I thought that if people could just see it in action, that would go a long way. And I didn't see any books out there that did that. There were books that talked about the technology itself. There were books that talked about how to trade cryptocurrency. And then there were these like conspiracy theory guys talking about, how government money is horrible and it's destroying the world, so you have to buy Bitcoin. I thought that if I could fill that missing gap with something readable, entertaining, really easy to understand, that would be a great contribution to the space. And it occurred to me, there's a book, Walden 2, which is an old book. Hardly anybody's read it, but it's a tour of a fictional commune, which was designed to talk about behavioral engineering, which when it was written in the 1940s was this really new novel concept that was kind of scary, especially coming after World War II and authoritarianism and mind control and propaganda and all that stuff. I thought that setup was a really good setup, so I created the fictional country of Consensus Land. And the country was founded with the idea that they would use blockchain and cryptocurrency for everything. So in creating this fictionalized environment, I was able to bring the realities of cryptocurrency, working with blockchain projects, people who are actually the engineers and the projects developing all these really great products and services that use blockchain. Like, these are real, legit uses of cryptocurrency. And it wraps all those things in a narrative, in a story of a businessman who gets an invitation from this country of Consensus Land to relocate. They'll build him a new headquarters and make him an advisor to the government. All he has to do is move his business. So he goes and he takes a tour of this country, and he talks to the people, he sees how they're using cryptocurrency, the good, the bad. There are things that he's really excited about, things he's not excited about, and then he has to make a decision as to whether or not he's going to move. And so the book basically takes you through that decision.
Run and get this book. It's on Kindle, it's on Amazon. I don't think it's on Audible yet.
If the print sales do better, then I'll have a little bit of a chance to make an audio version.
I'll hold out for that too. I'll buy it.
No, buy the book.
I have the book, and I bought the Kindle version.
All right, great. Yeah, that's right. Well, you have your version.
Yeah, I've got my autographed version.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So Mark, are you finding a lot more time to write right now?
No, I've focused more on my newsletter, it's called Crypto is Easy. It's a subscription newsletter. So between that and the stuff that I publish on Medium and other outlets, Hacker Noon, occasionally like CCN, Blockchain News, and other outlets where I publish commentary. I mean, that's taken up a lot of time. I would love to be able to write a sequel to Consensus Land, a few other things floating in my head. We'll get there. But right now, I've really been focused on putting out content for my blog and putting out content for these other publications about what's going on now with cryptocurrency, as well as commentary on some of the topics that people aren't discussing. For example, the topic that I wrote about for Bitcoin or Bust, the entry of institutional money. And also a lot of conversations and topics that are not really getting a lot of attention now within the cryptocurrency community. Specifically with the technology, there are so many ways that the technology is going to change the way we do everything. And that goes from law enforcement to healthcare to supply chain to basic fundamental rights that we have that nobody's really talking about. I'm hoping that I can continue to write some more of these articles, continue to build the readership of my newsletter. And then as those things kind of get moving, then I can focus on doing a little bit more of the more creative writing.
So right now you are staying at home, working
Yes.
from home, and you are working for Dr. Fauci.
Yes.
And as much as I love blockchain, that's pretty cool too, especially right now. Can you tell us a little bit about that, what you do specifically? Are you allowed to?
Yeah, I can tell you a little bit about what I do. I handle a lot of the correspondence, the data calls, the requests that go through the part of the agency that funds grants and contracts. So we do have a lot to do with what's going on with the COVID-19 response. Congress has appropriated a lot of money for COVID-19 research. Our agency is included as one of the agencies that's funded for the research and the countermeasures, interventions, and all sorts of other things related to it. But in my job specifically, I don't really deal with that. My association with Fauci is because he's my boss's boss. And when we put out grants and contracts, my job is to make sure that we mitigate or eliminate any conflicts of interest that Dr. Fauci might have with a grant or a contract. Fauci publishes with everybody. He has honorary degrees from a few different research organizations. He has a lot of connections to the research community. And all these guys apply for funding. They would do it whether Fauci was director or not. It has nothing to do with Dr. Fauci. But as the agency that funds these guys, when they apply for a grant or when they compete for a contract, that's our agency. And so Dr. Fauci has relationships with a lot of people who work for or lead the same organizations that are asking for funding for the federal government. My job is to make sure we flag those things so that they're not a conflict of interest. So Dr. Fauci, there is no way that Dr. Fauci could use any of his powers to influence the funding process. It's not just me. We have a whole bunch of people who make sure that whatever decisions are made solely in the public interest and solely for the benefit of the American people, our goal is there's not even a whiff or an insinuation that there's any political mischief of any kind.
That's really reassuring.
It is reassuring. I mean, everybody does it. Fortunately, in our country, all the agencies are supposed to do this, and I hope they do it. I give them the benefit of the doubt. I know we take it very seriously.
So Dr. Fauci and the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Disease has an incredible amount of influence right now on public opinion about coronavirus and the position of influence for how things are going to possibly go in the future. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Well, I can't speak on behalf of the agency.
Okay.
But I can talk about what I do and my own thoughts.
What are your thoughts about what's going on?
Full disclaimer, I am not communicating on behalf of the government, and I am not involved in the research or implementation of any of the government's work in combating the coronavirus. So I simply have the benefit of working for the agency. So my sense is it's a really serious problem. It's a really serious disease. It's incredibly contagious, and people need to take it as seriously as they can.
Well, wise words, wise words that underscore a lot of what we hear from other wise people. And
yeah, I mean, just look at the facts. The fact is it's 20 times as deadly as the flu and as contagious as the common cold. So don't mess around with it. You can't mess around with it.
No, you can't. But there are many people right now whose lives have been turned upside down completely. You mentioned that you have your children who are schooling.
We're doing remote sessions with their actual teachers through Zoom. And then their abbreviated lesson plans. They don't do a full day, but they do an abbreviated session and then homework that the kids need to complete and send back to their teachers.
Are you doing anything special to keep them occupied, to keep them entertained, to keep them exercised?
Well, it's tough. It's tough because we have work, and then the kids, they're young. I mean, I don't want to reveal their ages, but they're elementary school kids. I mean, yeah, I mean, they can occupy themselves, but there's only so much they can do. And so there's always I don't want to say distraction because that's not the word I really mean to use, but fortunately, both my wife and I, our workplaces understand, and I hope that anybody listening that, they're in a position where, their business, their workplace understands that this is a really extraordinary time. And the thing is, it's stressful. It's stressful. It's hard. And I don't want my kids to be just sitting around watching TV and on the tablets. So we do try to make sure that there's time to go outside, for them to play outside. We live in a neighborhood where we can show social distance, but also see people. So we can't really interact. Like we can't get together. But we can go out on our lawn or a driveway and talk to other people on the other side of the street who are on their lawn or on their driveway. I mean, we're fortunate in that regard. I know there are people in the cities who they can't do that because there's just not space. If you're in an apartment building, it's a lot different. My sympathies go out to anybody who's in that situation. For us, it's hard, it's stressful. We do the best we can. There are times where we just need to put the kids on the tablets. We don't like it. It wouldn't be in a normal day, we wouldn't be doing it. But at the same time, we need to be productive too.
What about people who are looking for things to do? We know that you research and you write and you're a geek, right? But you do write, you have written, and it takes a certain amount of discipline to research and to write. People have some time right now. What can you tell them about the discipline of an author or some hints to get started in writing their great masterpiece?
So I spent in my 20s working in politics. The thing is with politics is they're very long days and they really can test your patience. Everything you want to do, there's somebody who's trying to stop you. And I think that kind of hardened me a little bit, or I don't know. I feel like spending the better part of my 20s in politics really forced me to shut out a lot of distractions and really just kind of bear down and put those blinders on. The hardest thing for me now is doing that when I also have all these other responsibilities. Like I would say that if you can clear your space, try to get that time where it's just you and your thoughts. If you can do that, that's really, I think, the most important thing, because writing it's such a solitary endeavor. So right now, like I could not imagine dedicating time because just with the kids and everything else, it's like, that's my situation. But if you have this opportunity where you're stuck and you can take that time and dedicate that time to just shut everything out, that I think is going to be the most important thing and the place to start if you're fortunate enough to be in that situation.
So there's a lot of things besides writing that we can apply that to. Some of us do have a gift of time right now to be able to focus on some of those positive things, those self-improvement things, those projects that we haven't had an opportunity to do. And on the other hand, like you said, there are many young families who now have the responsibility full-time of educating their children on top of their day jobs that they're doing from home. So many situations, many opportunities. Is there any words of hope that you can give me and my friends during this time of upheaval, both financially and health-wise and anxiety-driven? What hope can you give us?
Well, I will say that the U.S. government and a lot of governments are taking really unprecedented and very aggressive actions to try to make whatever bad things happen as not bad as they can. Nobody knows what the future will bring. A lot of people worry that we're going to go into this huge global depression, and other people think it's going to be no big deal because, the Fed is doing this and Congress is doing that, and when the disease passes, we'll all open up and everything will be fine. We don't know. I don't know. But the thing I think is so amazing about not only this time, but also humans in general, is all the actions and activity that's going on to help us make the best of this. Pandemic disease is never good, no matter how you slice it. And it doesn't matter how strong your economy is or how weak it is. Pandemic disease is going to hurt. It's going to hurt from a health perspective. It's going to disrupt the supply chain. It's going to cause all sorts of consequences, both for you personally, your family, if you know anybody who's infected, or God forbid, somebody has health complications or dies. and if you have a business or your job is affected by it. I mean, there's no happiness in that, but it's just amazing how much conviction and passion and strength and activity is going into making sure that we confront this illness. You know, whether that's the research that's going into making sure that we have a vaccine and tests and therapies to make sure that we know how to treat it and how to respond and get us back to moving and get back to normal. Whether that's people working on the financial side or the policy side, trying to get the resources and equipment in the hands of people on the front lines, or people in the lending community, small businesses, people for a lot depend. You have mortgages, you have rent to pay, and the government is trying to create programs to help you. Our frontline, our first responders, our doctors, our nurses, we're ramping up all the things we need to do to get the equipment that they need to treat people, to diagnose people, to protect themselves. And it's just a matter of time and effort and persistence. And that's really hard. And it's going to be hard for a lot of people for probably longer than people would like to think. But humanity we're rallying. We're confronting things as best we can. And there's so much effort and momentum going into making this thing as good as it can get. And knowing that it sucks, it stinks, it's a horrible situation. The hope is that all these things that people are doing, it'll get us in a better situation than just throwing up our arms and saying, oh, well, we're all gonna die.
It's kind of cliche, we're all in this together. But when we know that our government, the small businesses in our town, our employers, our employees, the people who provide our basic services are all committed to getting through this, then that is hopeful.
Yeah. And we play our part by making sure that we don't spread the disease and we don't make it any more difficult on them to do what they need to do to get us out of this thing.
That's a good reminder. I'd like to take just a quick minute of silence to reflect on the tragedy around us and the hope and maybe some of the needs that you particularly expressed. Togethering, because we will get through this better when we get through it together.
Yeah.